This is our infant universe. Everything that will ever exist, everything that will ever happen, all begins here, within this tiny bundle of energy, smaller than an atom. And right now, history as we know it is about to mysteriously begin. For reasons we may never know, our universe suddenly erupts. Within a fraction of a second, the Big Bang creates all the energy that will ever exist. All the energy that will power the stars, that will fuel anything that ever lives. All the energy that you will ever consume dates back to the beginning of time. We're only a few minutes into our 2-hour journey, but already 380,000 years have passed. You are about to witness the birth of your original ancestors, the first atoms. This is hydrogen. The universe will use it to make everything in the world around us. The first atoms blast through the early universe. And luckily for us, they don't spread out evenly. Because in those tiny pockets with more atoms, gravity, the great sculptor of the early universe, begins to work its magic. The first galaxies are beginning to form, revealing a timeless secret of the universe. "300 million years after the Big Bang, inside of forming galaxies, gravity continues to squeeze together clouds of gas and dust, causing pressure and heat to violently rise. When the temperature reaches 18 million degrees Fahrenheit, hydrogen atoms slam together, creating a new element, helium, and radiating bursts of energy. The first stars are born. But something is missing from this early universe. There are billions of stars, yet not a single planet. To form planets, and the universe needs more to work with than just hydrogen and helium.
The complicated elements, the heavier things that we build stuff out of, for example, iron or life built out of carbon and things like that, they're actually manufactured in stars.
We may see stars like our own sun as sources of light, but there is something bigger happening deep inside. Stars are element factories. They fuse hydrogen into helium, helium into lithium, forging 25 of the most common elements we'll need to live, including carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and iron, for Lady Liberty to have material for her skin, for there to be gold for wedding rings, or uranium for nuclear reactors. Some elements had to be created another way. Stars don't have enough energy to do the job, but if the element factory isn't powerful enough, how about blowing up the factory?
Just a few million years after the first stars formed, some of them exploded. Wham!
These explosions, known as supernovas, are the biggest blasts in the universe since the Big Bang, providing the extra boost of energy needed to fuse heavier elements. In the fiery blast of their own destruction, stars create uranium, gold, all the rest of the elements that will fill our world, including copper.
The periodic table of the elements is really sort of a library of matter in the universe. Those are your building blocks. Everything is coming out of that particular chemistry set. Supernovas are absolutely necessary for us to be here. You know, we have iron in our blood. We have little bits of old supernova, therefore, just floating around through us. We are all stardust.
Go to any supermarket and buy a multivitamin. And go and look in the ingredients. You'll find copper, you'll find zinc, you'll find selenium, you'll find all sorts of elements that can only be made in a supernova.
The elements made by stars will become the seeds of life on Earth, but the journey has just begun. Before there can be life, the universe has to build us a suitable home. To get enough of the right material in the right place, all at once, takes a very long time. Over the next 8 billion years, more than half of history as we know it, the element factories continue their work. Stars explode and are reborn. Each generation with more heavy elements than the last. Until 4.6 billion years ago. Finally, there are enough materials gathered for the next step on the path to us. A new star is born. This is our sun. It's so massive that it's gathered up 99.9% of the gas and dust in the solar system. But there's still just enough left behind for gravity to build some other things. Like planets. The third one out from this star will be our home. By the time Earth emerges, just over 4.5 billion years ago, 2/3 of the history of the universe has already passed. The first sunrises sweep across a foreboding alien planet. A world spinning so rapidly that a day lasts only 6 hours.
When you go back to the early Earth, right after the planet formed, you really have to think of the Earth as another planet. The sun would have looked out over a hellacious scene of just molten lava. In places, you would see rafts of black volcanic rock.
Within the liquefied rock, the elements are all in a jumble. Something has to bring order out of this chaos. And once again, that something is gravity. Lighter material drifts toward the surface and forms a solid crust, while heavier material sinks toward the center, forming a molten iron-nickel core. This churning liquid metal creates a magnetic field that reaches out into space. Like a force field, it will protect our future home from the sun's deadly charged particles. Soon, this magnetic field will allow for life to grow, and later guide the explorers who will connect two halves of the world. But for all this to unfold, the Earth will need a critical partner. Four and a half billion years ago, an object the size of Mars smashes into the planet at 25,000 miles per hour. Earth swallows up much of the impactor. But a spray of molten debris is whipped off into space. Within as little as a year, gravity gathers this debris into a secondary sphere in orbit around the Earth, where it has been ever since.
The formation of the moon was an incredibly important event in Earth's history.
And in fact, its creation over 4 billion years ago is really important to the Earth's climate today.
The moon keeps Earth steady. Its gravitational pull prevents the planet from wobbling, saving us from wild climate swings. And the collision that formed the moon leaves Earth tilted on its axis. giving the planet a key ingredient to life: seasons.
Having seasons is very, very important for the evolution of life on the Earth. And having some stability in the tilt of those axes, that's very, very important also for maintaining life on the Earth.
The moon's gravity also begins to slow Earth's rotation, which will eventually lengthen our days from 6 hours to 24. $4.4 billion years ago. It's too hot on Earth for liquid water to exist, but there's water vapor, steam in the atmosphere. The trick is how to get it out of the sky onto any world where you hope to have life. A little rain must fall. For millions of years, as the planet cools, rain pours down, forming puddles, lakes, and eventually our oceans. Earth needs an oxygen-rich atmosphere, fertile continents for people to discover and develop. Who will create our modern world? There's 1 trillion of them crawling on your skin right now.
Bacteria are the oldest living organisms on the Earth. They've been here for billions of years, and what they are single-celled microscopic organisms. So they're one cell, and they have the special property that they only have one piece of DNA. So they have very few genes and genetic information to encode all of the traits that they carry out. And the way bacteria make a living is that they consume nutrients from the environment, they grow to twice their size, they cut themselves down in the middle, and one cell becomes 2, and so on and so on. So they just grow and divide and grow and divide. So kind of boring life, except that what I would argue is that you have an amazing interaction with these critters. I know you guys think of yourself as humans, and this is sort of how I think of you. And so this man is supposed to represent a generic human being, and all of the circles in that man are all of the cells that make up your body. So there's about 1 trillion human cells that make each one of us who we are and able to do all the things that we do. But you have 10 trillion bacterial cells in you or on you at any moment in your life. So 10 times more bacterial cells than human cells on a human being. And so of course it's the DNA that counts. So here's all the A, T, G's, and C's that make up your genetic code and give you all your charming characteristics. So you have about 30,000 genes. Well, it turns out you have 100 times more bacterial genes playing a role in you or on you all of your life. And so at the best, you're 10% human, more likely about 1% human, depending on which of these metrics you like. So I know you think of yourself as human beings, but I think of you as 90 or 99% bacterial.
$3.8 billion years ago, beneath the surface of our primeval oceans, a revolution is taking place. 6 simple elements, including hydrogen from the Big Bang, and oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen created by stars, have combined to form the key substances that will make up all life. The most spectacular is DNA. Within its spirals hide the secret codes of life. 700,000 years after the planet first formed, life on Earth begins. We stand not on the shoulders of giants, but of tiny organisms, bacteria.
I have within me an entire zoo of bacteria.
In fact, each one of us has more bacteria living in our bodies than there are people on the planet. For billions of years, microbes like these will have Earth to themselves. Like our infant universe, the first life is small, simple, and full of possibilities. The secret of how it explodes into all the incredible forms we see today, including us, goes back to the beginning of time. As we've seen, all the energy that will ever exist was created in the Big Bang. All creatures need to grab their share of this energy to survive. The more we harness, the more efficiently we use it, the more complex we can become. And almost all of our share of the Big Bang's energy is beamed to us by the sun. 2.5 billion years ago, some very special bacteria figure out how to consume the sun's energy to live. In doing this, they also create the most important waste product in the history of the world: oxygen. Soon, oxygen will remake our world. But first, it has another important job to do. Earth's ancient seas are full of iron particles, and everyone knows what happens when oxygen meets iron.
Here I'm a little bacterium, I've produced this oxygen molecule, and here's a big piece of iron clump, I rust it.
This rusted iron collects on the seafloor. Billions of years later, these huge deposits will be raised up to become major sources of the world's iron and steel.
It was these iron deposits that later on drove the Industrial Revolution.
In this way, the Brooklyn Bridge and the other early landmarks of the Industrial Age are a direct link to some of the first life forms on Earth. Once there's no more iron left in the sea to rust, these ancient bacteria have a mission to complete. They create so much oxygen that it fills the oceans and escapes into the atmosphere.
And from then on, we have a very different planet from all the other planets in the solar system.
Now, life takes a giant leap. For the first time, some bacteria learn to live on oxygen. Every human breath is a ritual. 2.5 billion years old.
Life tends to stick with what works, even over the course of billions of years.
Oxygen is a game changer. By taming its power, life has found a better way to energize itself. 20 times more efficient than anything used on Earth before. What life does with all this new energy will be the story that to look more like the place we now call home.